joining me on Commodacity and those on Facebook who are joining us this morning. So, our topic this morning is about parenting, and the topic is be a parent while you still can. Just so that there are no misinterpretations, let me start off by saying that this is in no way telling anybody that they should go and become a parent. If you there are persons who have decided for whatever reason that parenting is not for them, they do not want to be parents. Maybe they feel like there are enough people already on the planet using up the resources, the limited resources of the planet, and there are also just the whole atmosphere of the planet, the crime, the perversion that exists, the dangers that exist. Some persons just don't want to bring another human being into this world, and these reasons are legitimate. Their position is legitimate, and I would never be the person to say go and have a child because you have to fulfill some kind of biological obligation. Um, you know, I would never be the person to say your life is unfulfilled without becoming a parent, right? As a matter of fact, there are persons whom, from my observation, they should not be parents. And some of them already are, and I seriously wonder why they chose to become parents, because they clearly are not embracing the role. They clearly um, made a bad decision. If it was in fact a decision, I would more tend to believe that this happened on a whim, or from an accident, because of the way they behave, or should I say misbehave. So there are definitely persons who, in my opinion, are parents, just sticking to the biological definition of the word, but they definitely are not parents in terms of the social obligation that they should have towards these children. So I'm starting off with that just so we are clear. This topic, be a parent while you still can, it is in no way encouraging those who have not become parents yet to go ahead and do it just because of some biological obligation. This topic is actually speaking to those who are already parents and are not necessarily fulfilling the obligations, the social and moral and ethical obligations that should come with that. Right. So we're going to look, that's what we're considering today, right? Because there is actually a cutoff point. There's a window of opportunity, which if you don't seize that, if you don't form bonds within that window of opportunity, it becomes exceedingly difficult for you to try to do that later, right? So if you, as a parent, you are an absentee, you were missing in action, especially in the formative years. You did not fulfill your obligations, and then later in life, you get this sudden epiphany, and you realize, oh my God, I should have, if I could have, would have, should have, and you want to make it up. Not that you can't try, but I'm just saying the difficulty that exists later. So if you wait until your child gets to adolescence, if you wait until your child becomes an adult, and then you're going to come into his life or her life trying now to be the parent, you're going to see how difficult, near impossible that is for you to forge those kinds of bonds, and for you to have that kind of influence that you would ideally want to have. So from the get-go, you should try to be in the position financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, even before the child is conceived. Try to get yourself in that position so that you are able to be there in the child's life and be a parent to the child when it matters most, in the formative years, during that window of opportunity. Scientists believe the window of opportunity from 1 to age 7, which we refer to as the formative years, where the child is becoming, trying to get a sense of self. These are the years where the child is learning social skills, and these social skills begin in the home. Home is where home is the first school, right? And you want to be there to teach your child in these formative years the core principles, the moral principles, ethical principles, religious principles for those who are religious, spiritual principles. You want to ensure that this is ingrained in the child. You want to ensure, hi Natalie, welcome. You want to ensure that you are the main person who is teaching your child how to conduct himself or herself in the society, so that when they go out, they know how to function. They know what their position is. So they can take a stand and they don't fall for anything. You know that saying, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. You want your child to be able to stand her ground and not swayed by peers. You don't want to have a child where this child is now a juvenile delinquent in the adolescent years, and then that's the time you're going to come in trying to steer that child, trying to make a difference. It is extremely difficult, and as I said, almost impossible at that time. I have seen parents who were missing in action almost from birth, and then they come into the child's life when the child is a teenager. All of a sudden you suddenly want to come, you want to be the dominant person, or you want to be the parent, you want to be the influencer in the child's life, and the child is saying, who the hell are you? Who are you? Where are you from? You have no authority over my life. Right now, when I really, really needed the guidance in those formative years, where were you? And the child has a legitimate right to ask that question and to insist that you cannot and will not be given that authority anymore. You can try, and I wish you all the best. So this morning, we're trying to get this point out there to parents, while you can still have that influence and be a positive influence, a positive example in your child's life. Please do so while you still can. Sometimes you watch these documentaries, these wildlife documentaries, and you will see, for example, on the African plains, on the Serengeti, right? You will see the lioness guiding her cubs, right? You'll see the elephants, they're going across the plains for hundreds of miles, and the matron, they're guiding the little ones. The birds, they're guiding the little ones. And sometimes some of these animals, if you really watch them, you see that they don't, it's not really a pampering thing. For some animals, it is more, they're more nurturing. But even with the nurturing, there comes a time when the parent has to show some tough love. And even if you look at the birds, when it's time for the chicks to learn to fly, it's some really tough love. Sometimes they get kicked out of the nest to force them to grow, force them to do what they're going to need to do to survive in the wild. And that is parenting. We have parents for a reason. Children cannot guide themselves. Their brain is not developed fully. They don't have the life experience to make decisions, certain decisions. Yes, there are things that you can allow them to choose, so as to give them that sense of autonomy, give them that sense of independence. Definitely, there are things, they can choose what they want to wear for that day. They can choose, there are things that they will like. We're individuals, and your individuality begins from almost from birth. From it, you're starting to form your personality. Your individuality is going to come out, and there are going to be things that you like and things that you don't like. There are going to be things you prefer. There are colors you prefer. There are songs you prefer. There are foods you prefer. So definitely, you encourage your child to be, to have that ability to be herself, to be himself, to make certain choices. However, the real serious and important decisions cannot be made by children. If you allow a child to choose what they're going to eat for breakfast, they will eat chocolate for breakfast, chocolate for lunch, chocolate for dinner. They will have snacks for breakfast, snacks for lunch, snacks for dinner, because they do not know the consequences. And even if they know, they just don't have the maturity to make the kind of choices that will lean towards health, as opposed to what tastes nice, what feels nice in that moment. So we as the adults, having gone through that experience, having matured ourselves, our brains hopefully have gone through the formation that it needs to go through, all the processes, the wiring is in place now for us to make rational decisions and not make decisions out of instantaneous pleasure, temporary pleasure, right? We hopefully, as adults, are able to see, to have foresight, to make calculations based on what we know is possible, to think in terms of safety and those things. The child really is thinking in terms of fun, what is pleasurable in the moment. So there are parents for a reason. Children cannot parent themselves. There is a thing now called unschooling, and that is something I've always questioned. Unschoolers, most of them, because people are going to have their unique philosophies even within a culture, right, of things. So, but most unschoolers, they tend to feel that the child should be the main one who should decide what is studied. So in terms of education, and they might start from as young as toddler, first grade, second grade coming up, they allow the child to choose based on the natural inclination of the child. So if the child favors a particular subject, as a particular area of study, that is what the child will focus on. Now, there is some virtue in that, right? My children were homeschooled. I have 4 children. They were all homeschooled. And we allowed them some autonomy in terms of the things that they naturally gravitated towards. We allowed them to explore that. However, there are things that we insisted that had to be a part of their education, and it had to be structured. So there were sections of the day that were allowed for them to go off and explore and to do what they wanted to do. But there were parts of the day where we had to ensure that they stuck to a structure and that they studied particular things, because as the parents, we understood the significance. We understood the significance of them studying mathematics, studying science, studying their history as Black children. If you leave it up to a child, it will not occur to most children to know their history. But we, as responsible adults, saw where it was necessary for them to know their history, the history of their people, where they came from, what their people achieved, because as a group, especially in the West, Blacks are not taught about the greatness of their people. We are taught to believe that our people started in slavery, which is ridiculous, right? Our people had centuries and millennia of history prior to chattel slavery. And so, as a responsible Black parent, it is your duty to ensure that your children know what their people have achieved, that their children, both past and contemporary, what their people have achieved and are achieving. Blacks are told we cannot excel in mathematics, we cannot excel in science, we can only dance and sing and cook and be a comedian and things like that. So, as a responsible Black parent, it is your duty to make your child understand that they can excel in mathematics, they can excel in science, they can become presidents, they can become astronauts, they can become engineers. That is your duty. If you leave it up to the child, it might never occur to a child that this is necessary. So you are there as a parent for a reason. I really don't understand. Maybe if you're someone who practices unschooling, or if you know of someone who practices unschooling, maybe you can tag them in this video and let them explain what is the rationale behind allowing a child to decide what his education is going to be. Right? I understand children have inclinations, children have their passions, they have things that they prefer, and we should allow them to explore that, but it cannot be the end all of education. So maybe I'm not understanding what this unschooling thing is about, and maybe you can help me with some clarification, right? But I know as an adult that the children in my life, they need guidance, they need nurturing, they need an example, they need us to set the basis of their conduct in the society, right? That is the reason why we are there. And while I was homeschooling my biological children, I ensured that I was an example to them, that I was a role model to them. I ensured that they saw me reading so that they would become avid readers, articulate readers, right? What, Hakim Adubuti said, be what you want your children to be. Be what you want your children to be. Don't tell them do that and they don't see you accomplishing it. Don't tell them to achieve and they don't see you achieving, right? Be what you want your children to be. Lead by example. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Lord of the Flies, right? By William Golding. And William Golding was a Nobel Prize winner for literature. And this novel, Lord of the Flies, it's influenced a lot of writers. This book was written in the 1950s, and actually a movie was done based on the novel, Lord of the Flies. This book, it depicts what life would be in a society where there are no rules. So basically anarchy, right? And the main idea, in my opinion, that this novel brings out is that we tend towards savagery, we tend towards anarchy, and the way we avoid that is by having guidance and nurturing and structure. So the plot of this movie or novel is that there is a plane heading to, I think it was heading to a Boy Scouts conference. So there are only males on the plane. And this is important too, right? Only schoolboys on the plane, apart from the pilot and the guy who was in charge of the team, right? But mainly boys. Um, Maybe from 8 to about 12, 13-year olds, right? So let's say about 20 something boys in the age group 8 to 13. The plane crashes over the ocean, and the captain, all the pilots die, the two pilots die, the person who was in charge of the boys died. So these boys are left marooned on an island, all to their own devices. In the very beginning, it's all about seeing who is still alive, seeing how they're going to survive, finding some food, finding some water. But very quickly it descends into savagery, where we have total anarchy. These boys just run loose. And of course, you have the power struggle with the more dominant boys wanting to take over. And you have the divide and rule thing coming into play. And you have total chaos on the island. Total. I really encourage you to watch that movie or to get that book, Lord of the Flies. It's important that these are boys, and it's very interesting to know what would have happened had it been a plane full of girls. I always wonder, because there definitely are differences in the male brain, the male psyche, and the female brain, the female psyche. So it would have been interesting to know. And it's actually, I have an idea. I've had an idea to write a novel. For those who don't know, I'm an author as well. I write novels and nonfiction and all kinds of books. And I had an idea to write a novel that would compare the experiences of females, not necessarily on an island, but somewhere where the men have no access, and males in a similar situation, and compare what would happen based on the tendencies that males and females exhibit, right? So that's something for me to work. One of the things I'm working, one of my projects, right, for the future. But this novel is saying we are inherently savage. We are inherently savage. Humans have tried to be civilized, right? We have come up with rules and laws to help guide us because we realize that we are inherently savage, and without these rules and codes and laws and sanctions and punishments, repercussions, without these, whether you're thinking about it on the religious level or the social level in terms of incarceration. For many of us, the only reason why we don't go around doing bad things is because we are afraid of being incarcerated. We're afraid of being punished. We're afraid of being revealed. Some persons, the only reason they are Christians and they live the life of a Christian is because they fear hell. Take away hell, take away punishment, many of us would go around and do the most atrocious things if there was no threat of punishment. So, having this inherent savagery inside us from from birth, we need guidance, we need structure, we need authority, we need penalties in order to guide us. And that is the role of the parent. Nature ordained that there be guides because nature understands that, especially in the formative years, the brain is not capable of making the kinds of decisions that will preserve the species. It's as simple as that. The organism has not developed to the point where it can make the decisions to preserve the species. And so, for different organisms, is the time span, of course, is different. Humans seem to take the longest. Our society is more complicated, right? We have a more complex thing going on. And so for us, our brain takes a whole lot longer time to get to the point where we can make constructive choices that will not jeopardize the species. And up to that time, we need the guidance of those who have gone before, those who have had the experience, those whose brains have matured, have developed to the point where they can see ahead, where they can be proactive, where they can be have foresight, think outside of the moment, think outside of the temporary pleasure. We need those people in our lives to guide our steps, to stop us from putting ourselves and others in danger. We do. We need parents. And if you are a parent, you need to take that duty seriously. You need to, from the get go, and from the get go, I mean from conception, you need to be there from conception to guide your offspring so that your offspring does not become a delinquent, a juvenile delinquent, so that your offspring does not become a menace to society. You have to help mold and nurture that child so as to ensure the safety of all of us. The collective, you as the individual parent have to play your role so as to ensure the safety of the collective, because when your child goes out there as a delinquent, it's my life now that's at risk. Yours could be too. His could be too. But it's the collective, the safety of the collective that is at risk. And you have a responsibility. you have a responsibility to the community. You don't want to have motherless children, fatherless children who are having these insecurities. They're having these unresolved conflicts in their heads. They don't feel like they belong. They don't feel like they are loved. They don't feel like they were wanted. They did not get the care. They did not get the nurturing. They did not probably even get the nutrition to sustain them, to let them grow and develop properly. They did not get the stimulus, the type of stimulation that they needed educationally to help them towards developing. So we have people, adults now walking around who cannot think properly, they cannot reason. And the least little thing is said to them, they blow up because they don't know how to reason, they don't know how to resolve conflict, they don't know how to communicate. This is causing problems in the society for you and for me. Don't wait until it is too late for you now to be trying to make an intervention, right? There are things, and like I said, my children, they were homeschooled, so pretty much they saw me 24/7, every day, every minute of the day, right? I made sure that I was there, and this is a decision that I made from before they were conceived, because I was not going to leave their education in anybody's hands. That's a decision I made, that I would be the main one to educate them. I would be the main one to insist on what they needed to learn, what they needed to know. And my children have gone on now to win regional awards, local awards, scholarships to college, because their father and I insisted that there were things that had to be parts of their education. They had the leeway to explore their interests, but certain core things had to be covered. Right? Hi, Ken. Welcome. So, Ken is saying people aren't primarily motivated by the collective good. The positive motivation may be more inspiring. Be involved for the good of your own. Positive molding breeds positive outcomes. You're absolutely right, Ken. We tend to be individualistic, but the thing is, if you in your corner are doing what you should do, and I in my corner am doing what I should do, and the next guy, the next woman over there is doing what she should do, what we find is that the collective is prospering, the collective is getting sorted out, right? You in your small corner and I in mine, as the song says. You in your corner, I in my corner, doing what each of us should do as parents to mold, right? Thank you, Ken. I try to be an example to my children, to the point where, there are things that it got to the point where there were things I didn't even have to say to my children. They just understood. And it's not that I never wanted to say, I just did not have to say it. There are things where you don't let your kids see you living a certain life. They don't see you being promiscuous. They don't see you being, they see you becoming educated yourself. And so they just gradually fall into that. Now, I wanted to mention that as my children grew older, there were things that they said to me, I no longer want to do this, I no longer want to do that, right? And my children were raised to be independent in their thinking, even with my students. This is very important to me. As for my students, the most important thing in my classroom is for that student to be able to think for themselves, to think for yourself. And I always say to my students, even if the information is coming from a source of authority, if the information is coming from mom, dad, grandma, prime minister, pastor, whomever, always question that information. It must make sense to you, and if it doesn't make sense to you, you are to challenge it. There's a way to go about challenging it, but challenge it. It must make sense. And if it doesn't make sense for you, for your life, you have the right to reject it. Respectfully, yes, but you have the right to reject it, because what is good for my life is not necessarily going to be good for your life. We're all individuals, we're all on a journey, our own journey, and something might have worked for your parents in their generation. You living now in this generation, in this dispensation, those things might not work for you. Those things might not be right for you. And so you have to be able to stand your ground. Now, I want to mention three particular things that my children have said to me as they matured, that listen, I no longer want to do this. And for me, it was perfectly fine, even though these were core things that my children were taught from they were knee high to a grasshopper coming up. These were fundamental things in the household. And they got to the point where they felt that for them, it's not something they wanted. Not even that they were fundamentally against it, but it was just not something they wanted. So one of the things was, as my children were growing, we would have devotion sessions. We would have 2 per day. So in the morning and then in the night before they went to sleep. So we would come together as a family, and we would meditate. We would have affirmations. There's a particular affirmation that I wrote, and we used it for years. Positive affirmations, and then there are certain songs I would sing, and we would say the affirmations together 7 times. I still do this in my personal life. No, I still do my affirmations, and I would do these with my kids. And when they became teenagers, at least 2 of them said to me, they no longer want to do the devotion, because for them, they felt as if saying the affirmations, it's as if they were lying. Because when you're saying affirmations, some of the things would be things that you haven't already achieved, right? But you have to word it as if it's already been accomplished. And I can understand why some persons would think, no, I feel like I'm lying because I don't really have it. Why am I saying that it is done? Why am I saying I have achieved it and I haven't, right? I totally understand that principle, right? So, and I said, fine, totally fine. You've gotten to the point, you're an adolescent, you feel that you have another way of approaching your goals. That's totally fine by me. And that was the end of it. They didn't have to do the devotion anymore. Another thing was that, well, my family, my kids were raised primarily vegetarian. I myself stopped eating meat when I was 13. So the only meat I have eaten is fish from I was 13. And we would hardly eat, maybe once or twice per week, if that much. Typically, maybe once every 2 weeks, we will have some fish, right? And what I noticed also when my kids became teenagers, they started saying, I want to try other types of seafood. They have never said they wanted to have any other kind of meat, right? Which they know I am completely opposed to. But even if they did, it would be their decision to make as a young adult. they are now in the position, if they choose to start eating meat, I mean, I would advise them against it on health grounds, but it's a decision that they would have to make. But what I noticed, they wanted to try, they wanted to try lobster, they wanted to try crab. One of my sons said he wanted to try octopus and so on. And these are things that I have never eaten. And I said to them, okay, I'm going to let you try it. You want to try? I'm going to let you try it. So I went out and I got some lobster, and I think I got some crab, and they didn't like it. That first time when I got it, they didn't like it. But it resurfaced like a year or two afterwards. And they say, I want to try it again. I want to try octopus. And listen, even though I don't eat those things, they now want to try it, and it's up to them. There are three of my kids now are adults. I just have one teenager in the household, right? They now will have to make their decision. What I can rest on is that from birth to this point, I have given them the best nutrition that I felt. And this is the clincher now, because it's almost as if no matter what kind of parenting you choose, pretty much your kids are going to be opposed to it in some way. This is something I've noticed. If you're a Christian and you raise them Christian, somebody's gonna come out and say, "Boy, you shouldn't have raised." If you're a conservative, if you're a helicopter parent, your child is gonna say, you were too protective. You didn't allow me to do this, and now I have no survival skills. If you were a laissez-faire kind of parent and you just allow them to do, they're gonna complain and say you were too free. You let me do this, and now I've made so many mistakes, and you should have been more protective. So, and if you try to play the line, children are just going to object. They are going to rebel. There's a point in their stage of development where rebellion is the order. So it is for each of us, whatever your principles are as a parent, you just have to believe in that and do the best you can. So I can rest on the fact that I have tried my best, right? Yes, Ken, rebellion is in their DNA. And luckily for me, I think I've been really lucky. My children, they're kind of rebellion. I can totally cope. I can totally cope with their kind of rebellion. My children, they are so well behaved. Their kind of rebellion is just okay to compare to what I see other parents having to go through, because they are well mannered, they are well behaved, they stick to their studies, they just on point, and I feel very blessed. And I know it's not just luck, it's as a result of some serious long-term nurturing, right? Serious long-term nurturing and leading by example. Another thing that one of my kids said to me, where you see, we are very African centered. We're strong on African history and having our children know their history. And so my children would have been exposed to the speeches of Dr. Ben and Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey, and these stalwarts in the Black community. And we never ever insisted that they become activists, even though when we started out, we were really activists to the point where we had meetings and trying to influence persons towards becoming Black conscious and so on. And I remember I sent one of my kids a video. They were overseas, right? And I'd sent them a video of some Black activists who were demonstrating. And I sent the video really to ensure their safety, just to say be aware. This is bye, Ken. Thanks for joining and thanks for participating. All right. So, and I remember my child said, I don't, this is not the way I want to go. Activism is not for me. I will be conscious, but I don't want to be an activist. And to be honest, I wasn't even encouraging activism. But having said that, it wasn't a problem for me. It's not a problem for me if my child doesn't want to be a black activist. It's the important thing is that they are conscious, they are aware of where they are in the world, who they are in the world, who is likely to be trying to get at them, and what they need to do to preserve themselves on this planet. That's what's important to me. All right. So when you lead by example and when you make sure that you are there, you are present, you are available to them, that's the important thing. They will develop into who they are. They will develop to the point where they now know what their mission is in life, what their journey is in life. And then you just have to let them go. It can't be at that point where you're going to just be arriving and trying to influence them. No, that's the point of letting go. I did a video yesterday on a similar topic, and I was explaining that when I took my daughter to college, this was in 2014. We were in New York and we were en route to Chicago for her to start college. And I remember looking up at a billboard, and the billboard said it was advertising, I think it was a Broadway musical or it was a movie was being advertised. And the title was, "This is where I leave you. This is where I leave you." And that came home to me because I was saying, here I am about to drop my daughter off at college. I've taken her from conception to this point now where she's going to be in a different country. I'm going to be heading back to Jamaica. She's going to be in Chicago on her own. Yes, on campus, but on her own for the first time in her life. This is a person who has been um, she even when she started going to high school, so she was homeschooled, saw me 24/7 for 12 years of her life. And then she went to high school. The school bus took her to school, from her gate to the school, and from the school to her gate. She was sheltered, she was protected, and now she's in this great big city, one of the, I mean, very close to one of the worst cities, one of the worst areas in America in terms of crime, South Chicago. The University of Chicago was right next door. Right? And here I am about to leave her. This is where I leave you. But confident that I had done all that I could, all that was in my power to do, and I just had to rest in that, to say, okay, I've done all I can. No, I have to let go, and I have to allow her to make her choices. I have to allow her to find her way in the world. At that point is where you let go. That can't be the point where you're just now coming to try to hold on. For most of us, those who have been there from the early years, you're going to be your child's first love. Whether you're mommy or daddy, you are their first love. They adore you. And so you have to set the example for them to follow, right? You have to be there to forge these bonds with them. As they grow, they're going to now want to be more independent. They're going to want to be making more and more choices on their own, and this is perfectly natural, and this is fine. This is awesome that they're able to initiate things, they're able to take a stand on things, they're able to disagree with you respectfully, right? I am one of those parents who believe that my children should be protected, and so I ensured that they had things in place to keep them safe as best as I could. And this is for both boys and girls. I'm not one of those parents who feel that I must throw my boys out there to toughen up because they are boys. I protect my boys just as how I protect my girls. And my son now is, traveling back and forth. He's at college, about to start grad school. He had no issues in terms of being able to handle himself, and he was protected as a boy. Whatever I put in place to keep my daughters safe, I put in place to keep my sons safe. Boys need to be protected too. Boys need to be nurtured too. They need to be kept safe and off the streets too, right? So now they're at the point where they want to try this and try that. That's perfectly fine, right? Perfectly fine. They are at the age now where they need to make those choices. So if they are from a home where there was discipline, where there was structure, where there was freedom to express, where there was exploration, where there were positive reinforcements of values, then they are now going to be able to live their life according to those principles, right? But if they had no kind of structure, if they had no bonds, if they had nobody to talk to, nobody to express, if they felt fear, you can do you know the song Children Live What They Learn? If you listen to the words of that song, very powerful song. What a child grows with, that's what they're going to live with, that's what they're likely to become, and that's what they're going to perpetuate on others. We have to take this parenting thing seriously. We have to take parenting seriously, and every parent will tell you it doesn't end when they become adults, right? They're always going to be your babies, but and you're always going to be there for them. But at least when you're no longer legally obligated to them and they must go now and stand on their own, you can rest assured that you did the best that you could. You did the best that you could. And now they have to take it and see how they can bring it forward. It's you hand the baton to them. It's not that you're dropping out of the race. You're still gonna be trying to run along with them, but they now must go and forge their way in life. They say, as the twig is bent, so the tree is inclined. As the twig is bent, so the tree is inclined. You have to make sure to bend that twig according to the principles that you hold sacred. It's your core principles. Every household will have a different set. And you can't blame someone for insisting that their child conforms with their set of principles. That's what parents are there for. When the child comes of age, the now adult will choose. But at least you can rest assured that according to the best way you knew how, you try to mold that child. You try to bend that child so the child will now be inclined, and almost no one can get that child out of that path. and hopefully for the rest of us, it's a principled path, because you have many ways up the mountain, right? As long as you're not teaching the child to put somebody else in jeopardy, you're not teaching the child to be selfish and to exploit others. There are certain core societal values that we have. Don't be an absentee parent. Take your role. Whether you're male or female, once you are conscious of having created a life, it's no longer just about you. That life should be your priority, and you must do your very best so as not to make that life a jeopardy for the rest of the society. Wield the influence from that time coming up. Don't try to come in now in the adolescent years or the young adult years and trying to know how the influence, or trying to overpower the influence of someone else who took on the responsibility that you left. You are now coming to wrestle with the person. I know of persons who abandoned their kids, and somebody else stepped in and raised the kids from birth, almost from birth to now the kids are teenagers, and now the biological parents are coming back wrestling with the parent who took on the responsibility, paid all the bills, the school fees, the food, the clothes, everything the child needed. And now you just swoop in, oh, I'm the mother, I'm the father, I'm ready for my child. No, it's just a sense of entitlement, no sense of I'm grateful, no sense of gratitude. You just feel entitled, and you feel like, okay, you did that, thanks. And the thanks is not even sincere. But I'm ready for my child now. I'm ready for my child now. 15 years old, 16 years old. You're ready for the child now. And you think you're going to be able to just come in and have authority over that child. You have another thing coming. You have another thing coming. You're going to get a rude awakening. You're going to get a rude awakening, right? That someone else raised your child, and now you just want to bounce that person out and you want to take over. Know that the journey is almost over. Know that the child is almost an adult. You want to come in now and take the glory. No, you're going to get a rude awakening, right? And you might be coming now, and even you might even now really want to help, and your child might be in a position where they need the help, but they might not be open to the help from you. That's a sad thing. That's a sad thing. They might need the help, and you might even now be in the position to help. But if they're not receptive to you because they have blocked you out due to your absenteeism, you're coming now, they might not be open, and it's sad. It's really sad. They are rejecting the help that they need because they no longer see you as someone even trustworthy. Right? Know that they are not accountable to you anymore. They are no longer answerable to you, as the old folks would say. They are not answerable to you anymore. You can't say nothing to them again. They are past the stage where you can exert that influence. So this is my message to parents today. Take your job as a parent seriously from conception. From conception, or from as soon as you find out that this is the case, you have a child on the way, or you have a child who is now here. As soon as you find out, that's your job. That's your number one job in the world. Take it seriously. Give it all you've got. All you've got, everything you've got. It's for the betterment of all of us, because if you don't do your job and then that child comes to be a menace, that child is a menace to all of us. They're not going to keep it within a capsule, within a bubble. It's a menace to all of us, including you. So we have to help to raise each other's children, but the primary responsibility are the persons who created that child. Those are my thoughts for this week. Next week, we'll be back with some more deep and serious topics to discuss. Until then, this is Kama. Take care, and I'll see you next week.